my own experiences as well. And you think, I mean, I joined the workforce in the, late 2000s.
Okay. Do the maths.
I am an 80s baby, very late 80s.
Yeah.
And so I have an experience of being raised in the 90s and, what that looked like, and observing my parents go to work and how, they came back drained from work because they had to do that self-editing all the time. That self-policing. It's like, it's unsaid, but the rules. They're very clear. And if you step out of line, you'll be quickly reminded. And that's not just for myself as a black woman, but I think, there were very many restrictions that now we'd probably laugh at, tattoos, for example. When I was first entering the workplace, you couldn't have tattoos. It was seen as, you're probably a bit of a problematic person, a bit wayward, that's the word, thank you. And when I have these conversations with my sister who is, in her mid-20s now, and I say, this is what my life was like, and she's like, that's so old school, and she'll look at things and be like, I can't imagine not being able to bring myself to work, or not addressing this, or feeling like I have to self-edit. And I'm finding that with each generation it gets better and better.
Yeah, I think that's right. I think that's a measure of the progress. I mean, self-editing, code switching, covering, all of these kind of almost oppressive winds of turbulence that come your way. And to add to some of the examples I think we're both uncovering, I can remember in terms of internal promotions, or at least elevation and going for a job of your choosing, that one of the things you had to build was a narrative that centered self and spoke about what I did in a given situation.
Yes.
And I found that very difficult. I found it difficult because that's not how I was grown.
Yes.
I found that difficult because that's not how I grew up. I grew up out of necessity often, but with a very we culture, with a very collective, collaborative way of doing things.
Yes.
To this day, I will tell anyone who wants to listen, I am nothing without my mother, without my partner, without my extended family, without my dear friends who remain a part of this critical network that keep me going.
Yes.
So when I talk about what the team I'm a part of achieved, I talk about what we did.
Yes.
And I can tell you, I flunked a couple of my promotion boards because in one occasion, they literally stopped the interview. And they said, Rob, we're asking you what you did.
Yes.
We want to hear what you did, not what your team did, what you did. And if you can't answer these questions, Rob, we're going to have to stop the interview. I think I knew I wasn't going to get that job. but it was upsetting then. I laugh at it now, and we can laugh at it now. But it was a real issue, Rachel.
Yeah.
How do you convert the we thought, the collaborative way in which you've grown up, into this almost, and it is, in my experience, very Eurocentric.
Yeah.
I came, I saw, I conquered.
Yes.
Whereas of the earth and Ubuntu, I see you. And it's this collective approach that many of us who have been othered have grown up with.
Yes.
And I think this is an important issue, particularly when you're looking at some of the establishment, certainly here in the UK, and there's no clearer example of it than the civil service.
Yes.
No clearer example.
Yes.
Maybe the police, but certainly the civil service.
And it's interesting that you say that, because I am Ugandan. Okay. I was born in Uganda. I came here in 1990. So I was a few months old. But the history and heritage of, people of East African descent they're from the Bantu tribe.
Yeah.
And Bantu means people. And it's still in my language, means people. And in many languages in East and South Africa, that word you hear and you think people, you think a collective.
That's right.
And I found it very challenging, having to do, be like, this is who I am, and this self-promotion. I had to learn that. And I found that I had to almost assimilate into that kind of way of thinking. And I think there is a benefit to it, but also,
if you survive it.
If you survive it spiritually
and mentally. W.E.B. Du Bois, in his book, The Souls of Black Folk, he talks about this duality,
yes,
this almost split personality. Because one of the things I know and sense you and I have in common, Rachel, beyond the first letter of our first name, but what we have in common is that we both want to be successful in the workplace,
yes,
but we also want to be true to our community.
Yes.
And Du Bois talks about it in The Soul of Blackthorn. He says that it's this duality that often threatens to, I think the words he uses, tear us asunder if we are not able to reconcile it and understand it. I mean, I think Malcolm X talks about it more directly when he talks about the field and the words of the time, the field Negro and the house Negro, and the kind of tension between, serving the master and being comfortable with that, and being out in the field and having to, in days of enslavement when it was rough, if the master got sick, you'd be praying the master would die.
Yeah.
Whereas the house Negro would be, are we sick, boss? Are we
Yeah.
sick?
Yeah.
Their proximity to the comfort that gave them meant that they were invested in that source.
Yes.
Whereas if you worked in the field, you'd be praying the reset button got pressed, because it gave you a chance of
it's
liberty.
True. It's true, and it's constantly sort of balancing the two.
Absolutely.
And also, negotiating. In this moment, do I need to be the I, or do I need to be the we?
So true.
And
it's
really,
so true.
and I find that I've sort of fine-tuned that to a point where I'm comfortable.
Yeah.
Where I feel like, okay, yes, I'm doing this. It's outside of my comfort zone.
Yeah.
But I prefer to be the we.
Yeah.
But some situations call for the I.
Yeah.
But have there been, any examples or moments where you were able to fully, be your true self? Do you have any examples of any experiences where you had that aha moment and said, you know what, in this moment, this is the full manifestation of me as an individual?
I'm bound to say, with almost goosebumps coming through with the question, that there have been far more of those moments than there have been of the others I've described. Far more. Why? I guess because there's something about my Jamaican spirit that really, rebels against the kind of confinement, the kind of enslavement that in many ways that some aspects of working in a place like the civil service will place on people who are perceived as different. And so whether it be, I can remember the first time, just on about 12 years into my career, where an opportunity arose for me to go on a residential course for black managers in the civil service. It was called Black Managers in the Public Sector. It was put on at the Civil Service College. It was deemed quite a progressive offering. It was put under the heading of Positive Action Training, PAT for short. And on day one of a 5-day residential course, we had an after-dinner speaker, and her name is Neslin Watson-Drouet. She runs something today called Beacon International Development. She happens to be a Jamaican also, so I think there was some affinity there that kind of clicked for me.
Yeah.
But she came on at the end of a day where we kind of got to know each other. We'd done some introductions, we had some fun and games. So we were kind of tired, but not. At day one, meeting some friends. I'm a roaring extrovert, so for me, I just love a room that's full of people because that's where I get my energy. She came on and she talked about identifying proactively a percentage of your income to be spent on self-development. I had never thought about this before, that I needed to invest in myself. I mean, I was earning my salary and I was paying my way, but to then invest back in myself, whether it be, nowadays you can enroll in so many things, but, back in the day, we're talking about books and going out, and I didn't consciously think about it. She also talked about standing in your power. Just standing in your power, Rob, and identifying what it is about your flow that feeds that.
Yes.
How can you encourage that, inspire that, increase your appetite around all of those things? And she also talked about, having the DJ play your tune. And she broke it down. And honestly,
I love that.
Honestly, we all loved it, Rachel. I mean, honestly, it was like she really got us into the flow. She got us getting really in touch, with who we are, where our preferences are, and reminding us that your preferences are that. They are a preference. It does not mean you're not capable of those other things. I mean, I must admit, even I still struggle being on my own, but that's because I'm just a ridiculous extrovert.
You're on the extreme scale.
I am on the extreme scale.
MBTI.
I'm absolutely, I think 34.2 on that first indicator, extroversion, introversion.
Yeah.
But ultimately, knowing that we have the dexterity, it's a bit like Daniel Kahneman in his book, Thinking Fast and Slow. Whether we have a preference for thinking fast or for thinking slow, the real secret that he reveals is that we are capable of both.
Yes.
And that's what Nestlin Watson-Drouet, that's what she did for me. And I'm happy to say that we've remained friends ever since.
I love that. It's almost like, we all assume as soon as we're done with education, that's when the learning stops. But I learned very quickly that it really doesn't. No. It's kind of like the springboard for the education of life.
Yeah. Absolutely. As I get older, I realize more and more how much I don't know.
Which is a beautiful thing. Yeah.